Michael was 56 years old when his career ended in 11 minutes. At 9:02 Tuesday morning, his manager sent him a meeting invitation. At 9:15, someone from Human Resources joined the call. At 9:26, Michael was unemployed, 27 years with the company, a mortgage, a family, health insurance tied to his job, and retirement was still years away. Michael thought the hardest part would be losing the paycheck. He was wrong. 3 months later, the bills were still being paid. They still had savings. His family was okay. But Michael had started avoiding people, friends, former coworkers, even neighbors, because losing your job after 50 can take something from you that doesn't appear on a severance agreement. And Michael wouldn't understand what was happening to him until one conversation changed everything. The first Monday, the first few days felt strange, but manageable. Michael told everyone, "I'm fine." Then Monday came. At 6:15 in the morning, his eyes opened automatically. For 27 years, Monday had meant something. Shower, coffee, traffic, meetings, people waiting for answers. This Monday, there was nowhere to go. Michael walked downstairs, made coffee, opened his laptop, and sat there. No meetings, no emails, nobody waiting for him. For the first time in decades. Monday didn't need Michael. And that's when the layoff began to feel real. Because a job gives us more than money. It gives us routine, responsibility, status, coworkers, and sometimes our identity. For nearly 3 decades, Michael knew exactly how to answer. What do you do? Now, he didn't. 2:17 a.m. A week later, Michael and his wife sat at the kitchen table. Mortgage, insurance, utilities, groceries, everything went into a spreadsheet. Then Michael opened his retirement account. For 20 years, he had looked at that number and seen freedom someday. Now he looked at the same number and saw mortgage payments. His wife reached across the table. "We're going to be okay." Michael nodded, but that night, he couldn't sleep. At 2:17 in the morning, he came downstairs and opened the laptop again. He stared at his retirement balance, then his resume, then the mortgage. At 35, losing a job might feel like an interruption. At 56, Michael felt a clock ticking. How many earning years did he have left? What about health insurance? Would he have to spend retirement savings years earlier than planned? And one question frightened him more than the others. What if I can't find another job? So Michael started applying. The silence. The first 10 applications didn't bother him. Then 20. Then 40. Michael rewrote his resume. He shortened his work history, removed dates, deleted older positions. He had spent his entire career believing experience made him valuable. Now, he wondered if he had too much of it. Nobody told Michael he was too old. But after enough unanswered applications, he started wondering, was his salary history too high? Did companies think he wouldn't adapt? Did they want someone younger? Was 27 years of experience an advantage or a warning? Michael couldn't prove age had anything to do with it, and somehow, not knowing made it worse. Then, finally, an interview. Michael bought a new shirt, got a haircut, practiced his answers. For the first time in weeks, he felt hopeful. The interview went well. 3 days later, the email arrived. "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." Michael closed the laptop and didn't open it again for 4 days. The question he didn't want to answer. That's when something changed. Michael stopped calling former coworkers. He stopped going out as much. Then one Friday evening, his wife said, "Some friends are getting together tomorrow. Want to come? No. Why? I just don't feel like it. But Michael knew the real reason. Eventually, someone would ask, "So, Michael, what are you doing now?" And for the first time in his adult life, Michael didn't have an answer he wanted to give. His wife noticed. One evening, she finally said, "You're not yourself anymore." Michael looked away. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Silence. Then Michael finally said what he'd been carrying for months. "I'm supposed to know how to fix this." His voice became quieter. "I'm supposed to take care of everybody. I'm supposed to have a plan. And I don't." That was the moment Michael understood something. He wasn't simply afraid of losing money. He was afraid he'd lost his value. The conversation. A few days later, Michael met an old coworker named David for lunch. David had been laid off 3 years earlier. Michael expected advice about recruiters, networking, resume. Instead, David listened, then asked, "Are you trying to find your next life? Or are you trying to get your old life back?" Michael laughed, then stopped. Every job he'd applied for looked almost exactly like the one he'd lost. Same industry, same title, same salary. Michael wasn't just trying to find work. He was trying to prove that nothing had changed, that he was still important, still successful, still the same Michael he'd been before that 11-minute meeting. David looked at him. "You know they eliminated your position, right?" Michael nodded. Then David said, "They eliminated the position. They didn't eliminate you." Michael didn't say much after that, but he thought about those words all the way home. A different plan. That evening, Michael and his wife returned to the kitchen table. Same mortgage, same savings, same retirement account. But this time they asked a different question. Not, "How do we replace every dollar I was making?" Instead, "What does our life actually require?" They looked at everything: expenses, savings, healthcare, retirement. What could change? What couldn't? And Michael realized something. Maybe he didn't need to recreate his old life perfectly. Maybe the next job didn't need the same title or the same salary. Maybe success at 56 could mean something different than success at 36. Michael still needed income. He still wanted to work. But for the first time since the layoff, he stopped trying to go backward and started thinking about what could come next. 6 months later, Michael eventually found another job. The salary was lower, the title wasn't as impressive, and the commute was shorter. Years earlier, Michael might have called that a step backward. Now, he wasn't so sure. He had dinner with his wife more often, started exercising again, stopped checking email every night. And slowly, something else returned: confidence. Not because he had recreated his old life, because he'd finally stopped believing his old job determined his worth. Maybe that's what being laid off after 50 can do to you. You think you're losing a paycheck. Then you discover you're also fighting to protect your confidence, your identity, your retirement, and sometimes your sense of who you are. Michael spent months believing he'd lost his value. But eventually, he understood the difference. The company hadn't eliminated Michael. It had eliminated Michael's position. Those were never the same thing. 27 years of experience didn't disappear during an 11-minute meeting. Neither did everything he'd learned, everything he'd overcome, or his ability to begin again. And maybe someone sitting at their own kitchen table tonight needs to hear this. Your position can become unnecessary without you becoming unnecessary. Starting over after 50 doesn't mean starting from zero. The next chapter may not look like the one you planned, but different doesn't automatically mean worse. Sometimes a career ends before we're ready. Sometimes the plan changes without asking our permission. But that 11-minute meeting doesn't get to write the final sentence of your story. Thank you for watching. If you'd like more documentary-style stories about the financial, emotional, and practical realities of retirement and life after 50, please like and subscribe to The Wealth Perspective.